Captain Day-Wan stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the viewport as stars streaked past. His ship had been traveling through uncharted space for 3 months, mapping new systems and searching for habitable worlds. Earth and its 3 colony planets needed room to grow, and exploration was humanity's answer to an overcrowded solar system. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. Day-Wan had served in the United Terran Federation fleet for 15 years, but this mission felt different. They were farther from home than any human had ever traveled. The thought both excited and troubled him. Yuna, the young communications officer, suddenly straightened in her seat. Her console lit up with alerts, beeping rapidly. She turned to face Day-Wan with wide eyes. "Captain, I'm picking up a signal. It's not natural. Someone is broadcasting on multiple frequencies." Day-Wan walked over to her station and looked at the display. The signal was strong and clearly artificial. After months of silence in the void, they had finally found proof that humanity was not alone in the universe. "Can you translate it?" Day-Wan asked. "Working on it now, sir." "The computer is analyzing the patterns." Dr. Hana rushed onto the bridge from her lab. The xenobiologist had waited her entire career for this moment. She stood beside Day-Wan, barely containing her excitement. "This is it. First contact. We need to be careful and respectful. This could change everything for humanity." Day-Wan nodded, but something felt wrong. The signal was not exploratory or friendly. It felt like a command, broadcast with authority and power. Within minutes, the computer finished its translation. The message was simple and cold. "Primitive vessels detected. Identify your species and prepare for integration into the Valith Empire. Resistance will result in termination." The bridge fell silent. Hana's excitement drained from her face. Day-Wan read the message again, hoping he had misunderstood. Integration, termination. These were not the words of peaceful neighbors. "Send a response," Day-Wan ordered. "Tell them we are humans from Earth. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations." Yuna transmitted the message, but the response came within seconds. It was not what they had hoped to hear. "Your compliance is noted. Remain in position. A Valith vessel will arrive to collect your ship. Do not attempt to flee." Before Day-Wan could respond, 3 massive ships appeared on the sensors. They had come out of faster-than-light travel just kilometers away. The ships were enormous, each one 10 times larger than the horizon's edge. Their hulls were dark and covered in strange symbols that glowed with purple light. Day-Wan felt his stomach tighten. His ship was outgunned and outnumbered. Running would be pointless. Their only option was to talk and hope these aliens could be reasoned with. "Open a channel," he said quietly. The view screen flickered, and an alien face appeared. The creature had gray skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. It wore elaborate armor decorated with medals and insignia. This was clearly someone important. "I am Overlord Thex of the Valith Empire. You will surrender your vessel immediately. Your species will be evaluated for usefulness. If you comply, some of you may be allowed to serve." Day-Wan stood straight and spoke carefully. "I am Captain Day-Wan of the United Terran Federation. We are explorers, not conquerors. We want peace between our people." Overlord Thex made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace? Your species has just entered a galaxy ruled by the Valith. You have no choice but to obey. We have brought order to 37 species across hundreds of worlds. You are simply the latest." Hana stepped forward. "Please, there must be a way to coexist. We can learn from each other. Trade, share knowledge. Balance," Thex interrupted. "Lesser species do not negotiate. They obey or they die. We will now demonstrate what happens to those who resist." The transmission ended. Day-Wan immediately ordered his crew to battle stations, but he knew it was hopeless. "They were one small ship against an empire, sir." "They're targeting Kepler 442b, Yuna said, her voice shaking. Kepler 442b was humanity's newest colony, home to 40,000 people. Families, children, scientists building a new life on a distant world. Day-Wan felt ice form in his chest. "Hail them again. Tell them that colony is unarmed. They're civilians." But the Valith did not respond. The 3 massive ships turned away from the horizon's edge and jumped to faster-than-light speed. They were heading for the colony. Day-Wan ordered maximum speed, but his ship was too slow. By the time they arrived at Kepler 442b, it was already over. The planet's surface glowed with fires. The cities were gone. The orbital stations were debris floating in space. 40,000 people had been erased in minutes. The bridge crew sat in stunned silence. Hana was crying. Yuna stared at her console, unable to move. Daewon felt rage burning inside him, hotter than anything he had ever known. A final message came from Overlord Thex. This is the price of resistance. Surrender your coordinates to Earth, and we will show mercy to the rest of your species. You have one standard cycle to comply. Daewon turned off the transmission. He looked at his crew, seeing the same anger and grief on every face. They were explorers, scientists, dreamers who had ventured into space hoping to find friends among the stars. Instead, they had found monsters. Get me Admiral Taesung on Mars Command, Daewon ordered. Priority 1. Emergency frequency. It took 2 hours for the message to reach Earth and for the Admiral to respond. When Admiral Taesung's face appeared on the screen, Daewon gave his report. He explained everything. The Volith Empire, the demand for surrender, the massacre at Kepler 442b. Admiral Taesung listened without interruption. When Daewon finished, the Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was hard as steel. They think we will surrender after one attack. They think we are like the others they have conquered. They are wrong. The Admiral leaned forward. Send them no response. Give them no coordinates. Return to Earth immediately. If the Volith want humanity, they will have to find us. And when they do, we will show them what humans do when we are pushed into a corner. Daewon nodded. Understood, sir. We're coming home. As the horizon's edge turned toward Earth, Daewon made a silent promise to the 40,000 people who died on Kepler 442b. The Volith had started this war expecting an easy victory. They had no idea what humanity was capable of when threatened with extinction. They would learn, and they would regret ever finding Earth. 6 months had passed since the Kepler massacre, and Earth had transformed into a fortress. Every nation put aside old conflicts and united under one purpose: survival. Factories that once made cars now built warships. Scientists who studied medicine now designed weapons. Humanity had mobilized for total war. Commander Ji-won sat in the briefing room aboard the stealth carrier Phantom, reviewing mission plans with her squadron. She led the Wraith Squadron, an experimental unit that specialized in tactics the military textbooks never taught. Her ships were small, fast, and painted black to blend with space. They carried no identification markings. In the eyes of military tradition, they barely qualified as proper warships. The Volith fleet is moving through Sector 7, Ji-won explained to her pilots. 15 cargo ships carrying supplies to their forward base. They have 6 escort warships. She paused and looked at each face in the room. We will destroy them all. One of the younger pilots raised his hand. Commander, 6 warships against our 8 fighters? Those odds are not relevant, Ji-won interrupted, because we will not fight them directly. We will use the drones. She activated a hologram showing small spherical objects. They looked harmless, almost like metallic balls, but each one contained a nuclear warhead and enough fuel to accelerate to high speed. Engineer Kyung-ho designed these. We call them Stingers. They are cheap, fast, and do not need pilots. We launch them from a distance, they accelerate toward the target, and when they get close enough, they detonate. Ji-won smiled coldly. The Volith expect honor in battle. We will give them explosions instead. The mission launched 2 hours later. The Wraith Squadron approached the Volith convoy in complete silence. They had shut down all non-essential systems, drifting through space like dead metal. The Volith sensors passed over them without detection. When they were in position, Ji-won gave the order. Hundreds of Stinger drones launched from concealed tubes on her ships. The small weapons accelerated rapidly, spreading out in multiple directions. By the time the Volith detected them, it was too late. The first drone hit a cargo ship and detonated with the force of a small sun. Then another, and another. Nuclear fire consumed the convoy. The Volith escort ships tried to shoot down the drones, but there were too many. Within minutes, the entire fleet was destroyed. The Wraith Squadron did not stay to watch. They activated their engines and disappeared into the darkness of space before any reinforcements could arrive. Back on Earth, Engineer Kyung-ho watched the mission reports with mixed feelings. His Stinger drones had worked perfectly, but he could not forget that each explosion meant lives ended, even if they were enemy lives. His assistant noticed his expression. Second thoughts? She asked. Kyung-ho shook his head. No, but I wonder what we are becoming. The Volith called us primitive. Now we are using weapons that civilized species probably banned long ago. Maybe that is why we will win, his assistant replied. They play by rules. We do what works. News of the Wraith Squadron's success spread quickly through human military channels. Admiral Tae-sung called for more unconventional tactics. If the Valeth expected traditional space battles, humanity would give them chaos. Kyung-ho developed new weapons systems. The Reaper network was his most ambitious project. Thousands of small mines were deployed throughout space, each one equipped with advanced sensors and a powerful warhead. They could remain dormant for years, invisible and waiting. When enemy ships came near, they would activate and strike. The first Valeth fleet to encounter the Reaper network simply vanished. One moment they were traveling through what they thought was empty space. The next moment, mines detonated all around them. The fleet commander barely had time to send a distress signal before his ship was torn apart. Other tactics followed. Human cyber warfare specialists hacked Valeth navigation systems, sending entire fleets light years off course. Biological weapons were deployed on occupied worlds targeting Valeth physiology specifically. Psychological warfare broadcasts filled enemy communication channels with disturbing sounds and images designed to break morale. The Valeth High Command was confused and angry. High Chancellor Vorn, supreme leader of the Empire, demanded answers from his generals. "How are these primitives doing this?" Vorn shouted, his four eyes blazing. "We have conquered civilizations far more advanced. Why can we not crush one weak species?" Overlord Thex stood before him, clearly uncomfortable. "They do not fight like others, Chancellor. They use weapons we consider dishonorable. They attack supply lines instead of facing us directly. They hide and strike from shadows. It is cowardly. Cowardly or not, it is effective." Vorn slammed his fist on the table. "Our losses are mounting. Fleets disappear without trace. Bases are destroyed by weapons we cannot detect. This cannot continue." But it did continue. Mira, a survivor from Kepler 442b, had joined the military after losing her entire family in the massacre. She volunteered for the most dangerous missions, driven by a cold rage that never faded. She became part of a special operations team that conducted raids on Valeth command centers. During one mission, her team captured a Valeth intelligence officer. While others wanted to send the prisoner to headquarters for proper interrogation, Mira had different ideas. She questioned the alien herself, using methods that made even her teammates uncomfortable. Fear, pain, psychological pressure, she used everything. The Valeth officer broke quickly. He revealed the locations of supply depots, fleet movements, and weaknesses in Valeth armor. The information saved countless human lives and enabled successful attacks. But when Mira returned from the mission, she felt hollow inside. She had become something dark, shaped by war into a weapon as cold as the ones Kyung-ho designed. The war was changing everyone. Humanity had entered space hoping to explore and make friends. Now they were learning to be efficient killers. Every tactic that worked was copied and improved. Every weakness in the enemy was ruthlessly exploited. The galaxy watched in shock. Other species had heard about the Valeth's attack on humanity and expected the humans to surrender quickly like everyone else. Instead, they witnessed something unprecedented. A newly spacefaring species was fighting the mighty Valeth Empire to a standstill, using tactics that seemed insane. Some alien observers were horrified by human brutality. Others were impressed. A few began to wonder, if humans could resist the Valeth, perhaps others could too. Meanwhile, Commander Jiwon planned her next raid. The Wraith Squadron had become legendary, a ghost story told in Valeth command centers. Ships that appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating force and vanished before reinforcements arrived. The Valeth called them demons. Jiwon preferred to think of her squadron as equalizers. She knew humanity could not win through conventional warfare. The Valeth had too many ships, too many soldiers, too many resources. But wars were not won by numbers alone. They were won by will, by creativity, by the refusal to accept defeat. Humanity had learned a painful lesson at Kepler 442b. The galaxy was not a friendly place waiting to welcome them. It was a battlefield where only the strong survived. The Valeth had expected humans to be weak, to surrender after the first demonstration of power. They were learning how wrong they had been, and the lessons were written in fire and blood across the stars. 18 months into the war, humanity stood at a crossroads. They had survived when everyone expected them to fall. They had hurt the Valeth when everyone said it was impossible. But survival and victory were different things. The war had become a stalemate, and stalemates favored the side with more resources. That side was not humanity. Ambassador Siok stood before the Galactic Council for the first time, representing Earth in the Great Assembly, where dozens of alien species met to discuss matters of mutual interest. The council chamber was enormous, filled with beings of every imaginable shape and size. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others lived in tanks of liquid or wore environmental suits. The diversity was beautiful, but the atmosphere was cold. Siok had spent weeks preparing for this moment. She wore a formal suit displaying Earth's colors, and she carried documents detailing the Valeth aggression. She had evidence, testimony, proof of unprovoked genocide. Surely the council would help once they understood the truth. But when she finished her presentation, the council representatives simply stared at her. Finally, a delegate from the Morlix species spoke. "We are aware of your conflict with the Valeth Empire. We are also aware that you have fought bravely. However, the Council maintains a policy of non-interference in territorial disputes." Territorial dispute? Siok felt her temper rising. "They massacred 40,000 civilians without warning. They declared their intention to enslave or exterminate my entire species. This is not a dispute. This is genocide." Another delegate, this one from the Tharnix Collective, made a clicking sound that the translator interpreted as disapproval. "The Valeth Empire is a major galactic power. They have been part of the Council for 3,000 years. We cannot take action against them based on the claims of a species we just met." Siok looked around the chamber, seeing the truth in their faces. They were afraid. The Valeth were too powerful, too established. No one wanted to risk becoming their next target. She left the council chamber feeling defeated, but not broken. If official channels would not help, she would find other ways. Meanwhile, Sujin worked in the intelligence division on Mars, analyzing everything humanity could learn about the galaxy. She sifted through intercepted communications, hacked databases, and information purchased from smugglers. Most of it was useless, but sometimes she found gems. One night she discovered something that made her blood run cold. Hidden in old Valeth records was a monument they had built to commemorate their victories. It was called the Memorial of the Conquered, and it listed every species the Valeth had defeated over 5,000 years. 37 species. 37 entire civilizations erased or enslaved. Some of the names Sujin recognized from the Galactic Council. They were members now, integrated into Valeth territory. They served the Empire, sent tribute, and followed orders. They had no real freedom, but at least they survived. Others on the list were simply gone, extinct, wiped out when they resisted too strongly. Sujin compiled a report and sent it to Ambassador Siok. If the galaxy would not listen to pleas for help, perhaps they would listen to evidence of what the Valeth truly were. Across the galaxy, various species watched humanity struggle with different emotions. Watcher Nex, a representative of the neutral Quellian Confederacy, had been observing the conflict with great interest. The Quellians were an old species, having achieved space travel long before humans existed. They prided themselves on wisdom and neutrality. But watching humanity fight the Valeth stirred something in Nex. Memories of when the Quellians themselves had been threatened by the Empire thousands of years ago. They had chosen submission over destruction. It was a practical choice, a wise choice. They told themselves that survival mattered more than pride. Now, watching humans refuse to make that same choice, Nex wondered if wisdom and cowardice looked similar. Admiral Day 1, promoted from captain, after his actions at Kepler 442b, was planning something desperate. Earth's military leaders knew they could not win a long war of attrition. The Valeth would eventually overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Humanity needed to change the equation. Operation Ragnarok, Day 1 explained to the assembled admirals and generals. We take every warship we have, every weapon we can load. and we strike directly at the Valith homeworld. The room erupted in argument. Some called it suicide. Others said it was insane. Admiral Tae-sung raised his hand for silence. "Explain the purpose," Tae-sung said simply. Daewon brought up a holographic star map. "The Valith think we are cornered animals fighting for survival. They think eventually we will exhaust ourselves and surrender. They are patient because they have time. We need to show them they are wrong. We need to prove that humanity will never stop fighting, even if it costs us everything." "You are not talking about winning," another admiral observed. "You are talking about revenge." "I am talking about deterrence," Daewon corrected. "If we hurt them badly enough in their own home system, they will realize that defeating humanity means unacceptable losses. They will have to negotiate or commit to total war. Either way, we gain leverage." Admiral Tae-sung considered this. The plan was risky, possibly suicidal, but doing nothing meant slow defeat. At least Ragnarok offered a chance to change the game. "Approved," Tae-sung said. "Prepare the fleet. We launch in 1 month. That month was chaos. Every shipyard worked at maximum capacity. Volunteers lined up to join the mission, knowing it might be one way. Families said goodbye to loved ones. Children were told their parents were heroes, even if they might never come home. When the fleet finally assembled, it was the largest human armada ever created. 300 warships, thousands of fighters, and millions of tons of weapons. It represented nearly everything humanity had built in 18 months of total war. The journey to Valith territory took 3 weeks. They traveled in complete communication silence, using jump coordinates that Sujin had stolen from Valith databases. When they arrived at the edge of the Valith home system, they found it heavily defended. Orbital platforms, defense stations, and a massive fleet guarded the approaches. Daewon gave the order to attack. The battle was brutal. Human ships launched every weapon they had. Nuclear missiles, kinetic rounds, energy beams, cyber attacks, everything. The Valith defenders responded with overwhelming firepower. Ships on both sides exploded. Space filled with debris and the flash of detonations. Humanity could not break through to the planet itself, but they destroyed 3 defense platforms and crippled dozens of Valith warships before being forced to retreat. The operation cost humanity 75 ships and thousands of lives. By military standards, it was a defeat. The Valith homeworld was barely scratched, but the psychological impact was enormous. Never before had an enemy fleet reached the Valith home system. Never before had the Empire's citizens seen explosions in their own sky. Never before had the Valith military been forced to defend their capital. High Chancellor Vorn was furious and shaken. The humans had brought war to his doorstep. It was unthinkable. It was intolerable. It was also terrifying. Ambassador Seok used the moment perfectly. She sent a message to every species in the galaxy, broadcast on every frequency. Humanity struck the Valith homeworld today. We lost many brave people in the attempt, but we proved something important. The Valith are not invincible. They can bleed. They can be hurt, and if one species can resist them, others can too. She included Sujin's research about the Memorial of the Conquered, showing the galaxy how many civilizations had fallen to Valith aggression. She finished with a simple question. How many more species will be added to that memorial before someone stands up? Humanity is standing. Will you stand with us? The message spread across the galaxy. Some dismissed it as propaganda. Others ignored it out of fear. But some, like Watcher Nex, saw it differently. Seok received a private communication 3 days after Operation Ragnarok. Ambassador Seok, this is Watcher Nex of the Quellian Confederacy. I wish to discuss mutual interests. Perhaps it is time for wisdom to rediscover courage. 2 years after first contact, the war entered a new phase. 3 alien species had openly joined humanity's cause. The Quellians brought advanced sensor technology and experienced diplomats. The Draenei provided heavy warships with powerful shields. The Ishkara contributed biological expertise and medicine. Together with humanity's unconventional tactics, they formed something unprecedented. A military coalition built on mutual defense rather than conquest. The Valith Empire responded with rage. High Chancellor Vorn declared the coalition members traitors to Galactic Order and promised severe punishment. He assembled the largest invasion force in Valith history and aimed it directly at Earth. The message was clear. Humanity would be crushed, and their allies would learn the price of defiance. General Bora stood on the walls of New Seoul, looking up at the sky where battles would soon rage. She commanded Earth's ground defense forces, responsible for protecting the planet if the enemy broke through the orbital defenses. Behind her, the city bustled with activity. Civilians were being evacuated to underground shelters. Anti-aircraft weapons were positioned on every rooftop. Soldiers manned checkpoints at every intersection. "Do you think we can hold them?" asked her second-in-command. Major Taemin Bora did not answer immediately. She had fought in the defense of Mars Station and survived 3 boarding actions against Valith Marines. She knew how dangerous they were. But she also knew something else. We do not have a choice. If Earth falls, humanity ends. So yes, we will hold them, because the alternative is unacceptable. High above Earth's atmosphere, the space battle began. The Valith invasion fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel in overwhelming numbers. 5,000 warships, each one bristling with weapons. Overlord Thex commanded from his flagship, determined to finish what he had started 2 years ago. The coalition fleet moved to intercept. They were outnumbered 3-1, but they had advantages the Valith did not expect. Quellian sensors detected enemy ships before Valith sensors detected them. Dranak shields absorbed punishment that would have destroyed human vessels. Ishkara medical teams kept crews alive when they should have died. And human tactical doctrine tied it all together with aggressive, unpredictable strategies. Pilot Jason launched from the orbital station Freedom, leading a squadron of 40 fighters. His ship was small and fragile compared to the massive warships around him, but fighters had proven their worth in this war. They could slip through defenses, strike critical systems, and escape before the enemy responded. "All squadrons, this is Jason. Stay close to the heavy ships until we spot an opening. Then we go for their carriers." The battle was chaos. Ships exploded on both sides. Energy beams crossed space like lightning. Missiles traced glowing paths through the void. Jason's squadron weaved between the larger vessels, looking for opportunities. He spotted a Valith carrier launching fighters and made his decision. "Follow me. Target that carrier's launch bay." His squadron accelerated, dodging defensive fire. 3 of his pilots were hit and died in silent explosions. The rest pressed forward. They fired missiles directly into the carrier's open launch bay, then veered away as secondary explosions tore the massive ship apart from the inside. "Carrier down," Jason reported. Reforming on the Dranak cruiser Guardian, the space battle raged for 6 hours. The coalition forces fought with desperate skill, but the Valith numbers were too great. Eventually, enemy ships broke through the orbital defense line and entered Earth's atmosphere. That was when General Bora's forces engaged. Valith dropships descended on cities across the planet, deploying ground troops and war machines. Bora's defenders met them with everything they had. In New Seoul, the fighting was street by street. Valith soldiers were larger and stronger than humans. Their armor could withstand small arms fire, and their weapons could blast through concrete. But humans knew their own cities better than any invader could. They used buildings as cover, set ambushes in subway tunnels, and coordinated attacks from unexpected angles. Bora led a battalion defending the city center. When a Valith war machine smashed through the barricade, she personally disabled it with magnetic charges placed on its vulnerable joints. When Valith soldiers tried to storm the command center, her troops collapsed the building entrance and fought them in the rubble. The battle for Earth became the largest ground engagement in galactic history. Millions of soldiers fought across every continent. Cities burned, casualties mounted on both sides. But Earth did not break. Admiral Daewon coordinated the orbital battle from his flagship, the Retribution. He watched the tactical displays, seeing the larger picture. The Valith were winning in space, but slowly. Every victory cost them dearly. Their ships were being destroyed faster than expected. Their supply lines were being raided by coalition strike teams, and Earth's defenders were bleeding them in the atmosphere. "Admiral, we are receiving reports from the outer system," his communications officer reported. "Additional coalition forces are arriving. The Quellians sent reinforcements." Daewon allowed himself a small smile. Ambassador Siak had been working diplomatic channels constantly, convincing more species to join the fight. Every new ally changed the balance slightly. Overlord Thex saw his invasion slowly grinding to a halt and made a fatal decision. He committed his reserve forces all at once, throwing every remaining ship at Earth in a desperate final push. It was a gamble. If he broke the defenders now, Earth would fall and the coalition would collapse. If he failed, he would have nothing left. The Quellian reinforcements arrived at exactly that moment. Fresh ships with full weapons and shields crashed into Thex's overextended fleet. The Vilith formation broke. Ships tried to retreat but found themselves surrounded. The battle turned from a Vilith invasion into a coalition counterattack. Pilot Jason, his fuel nearly exhausted and his weapons empty, watched as Vilith ships began fleeing the system. He had lost half his squadron, but they had survived. Earth had survived. On the ground, General Bora received word that Vilith forces were withdrawing. The enemy soldiers fought their way back to their dropships and escaped into orbit. New Sol was battered and burning, but still standing. The civilians emerged from shelters to see their city damaged but not destroyed. They had won. Overlord Thex retreated with what remained of his fleet, less than half of what he had brought to Earth. For the first time in his career, he had been defeated. The mighty Vilith Empire had thrown its full strength at a single planet and been repelled. High Chancellor Vorn watched the reports from Earth with mounting horror. The invasion had failed. Worse, it had failed publicly. Every species in the galaxy was watching. The Vilith Empire had been humiliated. Ambassador Siok wasted no time capitalizing on the victory. She sent messages to every neutral species in the galaxy. The Vilith invaded Earth with 5,000 warships. They were defeated, not by superior numbers, but by cooperation, courage, and the refusal to surrender. The coalition is open to all who wish to stand against tyranny. Join us, and together we can build a galaxy where might does not make right. More species answered her call. Some sent military support. Others provided intelligence or resources. A few simply offered diplomatic recognition, acknowledging the coalition as a legitimate power in galactic politics. The movement was growing. Watcher Nex met with Ambassador Siok in private after the battle. The old Quellian looked at her with something like admiration. Your species has taught the galaxy something we had forgotten. That power can be challenged. That empires can fall. That freedom is worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. Siok nodded tiredly. She had not slept properly in weeks. We paid a terrible price for this lesson. Millions dead on Earth alone. But yes, we proved the Vilith can be beaten. What will you do now? Nex asked. Siok's eyes hardened. Now we take the fight to them. The Vilith started this war. We are going to finish it. Across human space, the mood shifted from desperate defense to determined offense. Humanity and its allies had survived the worst the Vilith could throw at them. Now it was time for retribution. The coalition began planning an invasion of Vilith territory, liberating the worlds the Empire had conquered and dismantling their power piece by piece. The galaxy had expected humans to be erased within weeks of first contact. Instead, humanity had built a coalition that challenged the greatest empire in known space. The Vilith had learned humans could retaliate. Soon they would learn humans could win. 3 years after first contact, the coalition fleet gathered at the edge of Vilith territory. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Ships from 8 different species filled the space around the rally point, united by a common purpose: to end the Vilith Empire's reign of terror. Admiral Day Wan stood on the bridge of the Retribution, looking at the display showing every ship under his command. Quellian cruisers with their advanced sensors, Drenak battleships built like flying fortresses, Ishkara medical vessels ready to save lives, human carriers packed with fighters, and dozens of smaller ships from species that had suffered under Vilith rule for generations. All fleet commanders report ready, his communications officer announced. Day Wan took a deep breath. This was the moment everything had been leading toward. 3 years of war, millions of deaths, countless sacrifices. Now humanity and its allies would finally strike back at the heart of the Empire. Begin the offensive, Day Wan ordered. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, targeting the first Vilith-controlled system on their list. When they arrived, they found a world called Tharn Minor, home to a species that had been conquered 500 years ago. The Vilith garrison surrendered after a brief fight, shocked that anyone would dare invade their territory. As soon as the system was secure, the coalition broadcast a message to the planet below. The native Tharn species, enslaved for centuries, heard words they never expected. This is the coalition of free worlds. We have come to liberate you. The Vilith Empire no longer controls this system. You are free. The Tharn people erupted in celebration. They tore down Valith monuments, freed prisoners from labor camps, and declared independence. Within days, they joined the coalition, adding their own ships to the growing fleet. This pattern repeated across dozens of systems. World after world, the coalition advanced through Valith territory. Some garrisons fought to the death. Others surrendered. The liberated species joined the coalition, their anger at centuries of oppression now channeled into helping defeat their former masters. Engineer Kyung-ho watched the campaign from Earth, monitoring the effectiveness of his weapons. The Reaper mines, the Stinger drones, the cyber warfare systems, all of them were being used to devastating effect. But as the victory reports came in, Kyung-ho felt increasingly troubled. He had designed these weapons to protect humanity when they were facing extinction. Now they were being used to conquer Valith worlds. The lines between defense and aggression were blurring. He confided his concerns to his assistant. "We have become good at destroying things. Maybe too good. When this war ends, what kind of people will we be?" His assistant did not have an answer. Mira, the soldier who had survived Kepler 442b, was part of the ground forces liberating occupied worlds. She had spent 3 years fighting, killing, watching friends die. The rage that had sustained her was still there, but it was changing, becoming colder, more calculated. On one liberated world, her squad captured a group of Valith administrators who had run the occupation government. Her fellow soldiers wanted to send them to trial. Mira wanted something else. She remembered the 40,000 people who died on Kepler 442b, and she wanted these Valith to suffer. Her squad commander, Lieutenant Hansol, stopped her. "Mira, they are prisoners now. We do not execute prisoners." "They executed my family," Mira replied coldly. "They murdered children. Why do they deserve mercy?" "Because we are not them," Hansol said firmly. "The moment we become like the Valith, we lose. Even if we win the war, we lose what makes us human." Mira lowered her weapon, but the anger did not leave her eyes. The coalition advance continued until they reached the Valith home system. High Chancellor Vorn had gathered the remnants of his fleet for a final defense. He knew the Empire was collapsing, but he refused to surrender. The Valith had ruled for 5,000 years. They would not fall without a fight. Admiral Daewon led the final assault personally. The battle for the Valith homeworld lasted 3 days. It was brutal, desperate, and costly. The Valith threw everything they had at the coalition, fighting with the fury of a dying empire. On the second day of battle, Daewon's ship engaged Overlord Thex's flagship. The two commanders had been enemies since the beginning, when Thex destroyed Kepler 442b and started this war. Now they faced each other in a duel that neither expected to survive. "You should have surrendered when I gave you the chance." Thex transmitted to Daewon. "Your species would have been spared." "Spared?" Daewon replied. "You mean enslaved. You never understood humanity at all. We would rather die free than live on our knees." The two ships hammered each other with every weapon they had. Both were damaged, both were leaking atmosphere, both were dying. Finally, Daewon's crew landed a critical hit. Thex's flagship lost power and began drifting. Coalition Marines boarded the crippled vessel and captured the Overlord. High Chancellor Vorn watched his forces crumble and finally accepted the truth. The Valith Empire was finished. He sent a message to Admiral Daewon requesting terms of surrender. Back on Earth, Chancellor Hai Jin convened an emergency session of the coalition leadership. She was the new head of the United Terran Federation, elected during the war to guide humanity through its darkest hour. Now she faced a different challenge: what to do with victory. "The Valith Empire has surrendered," she announced. "We have won. Now we must decide what winning means." The debate was fierce. Some coalition members wanted to dismantle Valith civilization completely, ensuring they could never threaten anyone again. Others wanted trials and executions for Valith leadership. A few even suggested enslaving them as punishment. Engineer Kyung-ho attended the session as an advisor. When asked for his opinion, he spoke carefully. "I built weapons that killed millions. I did it to protect humanity, and I do not regret that. But if we use our victory to become conquerors ourselves, then the Valith were right about us. We were primitives who only understood violence." Ambassador Siak agreed. "We fought for the right to exist peacefully. If we turn around and inflict the same suffering on the Valith that they inflicted on us, we become hypocrites. The galaxy is watching. This moment will define what kind of civilization humanity becomes. Chancellor Haye Jin listened to all arguments, then made her decision. The Valeth Empire will be dismantled. Their military will be dissolved. Their leaders will stand trial for their crimes. But their people will not be enslaved or exterminated. They will be allowed to rebuild under coalition oversight, as equals once they prove they have changed. Some coalition members protested, saying it was too lenient. Others worried the Valeth would betray them. But He-Jin stood firm. Mercy is not weakness. It is strength. We will show the galaxy that power without brutality is possible. That is how we change things permanently. Mira heard about the decision and felt conflicted. Part of her wanted revenge, wanted to see the Valeth suffer as she had suffered. But another part, smaller and quieter, was tired of hating. She visited the memorial built for Kepler 442b victims and stood before the wall of names. Her parents, her siblings, her friends, all gone. I wanted them to pay, she whispered to the names. But maybe Lieutenant Hansel was right. Maybe being better than them is the real victory. It took 2 years to fully implement the peace terms. Valeth territory was divided into independent zones, each governed by the species that had been conquered. The Valeth homeworld remained under their control, but with strict limitations on military capability. Coalition observers monitored compliance. The Galactic Council, which had refused to help humanity 3 years ago, now requested to join the coalition. Ambassador Siok denied the request initially. Where were you when we faced extinction? You watched while the Valeth massacred civilians. Now that we have won, you want to be allies? The council representatives had no good answer. Eventually, after much negotiation, a compromise was reached. The Galactic Council would be reformed into a new organization, the New Galactic Compact. All species would be equal members, with no permanent dominant powers. Decisions would require consensus. Military action would require overwhelming justification. Humanity became a founding member of the New Galactic Compact, alongside the Quellians, Drenak, Ishkara, and 24 other species. Even the Valeth were eventually admitted, once they completed their rehabilitation period. 10 years after first contact, Captain Yuna, promoted from communications officer, stood on the bridge of a new exploration vessel. The old Horizon's Edge had been destroyed in the war, but this new ship carried the same name. Humanity was returning to space exploration, but this time with allies and experience. Looking at her crew, Yuna saw humans working alongside Quellians, Drenak, Ishkara, and even a few young Valeth who had chosen to serve with their former enemies. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. The age of empires built on conquest was ending. Something better was beginning. Admiral Daewon, now retired, attended the Horizon's Edge launch ceremony. Someone asked him if humanity's fight had been worth the cost. 3 million humans died in the war. Daewon replied quietly. Millions more from other species. The price was terrible, but yes, it was worth it. Because we proved that tyranny can be defeated, that freedom is possible, that mercy can be stronger than revenge. The galaxy will never be the same, and that is good. The Horizon's Edge departed Earth, heading for unknown regions of space. This time, when they met new species, they would come as equals, not conquerors or victims. They would come as members of a galaxy learning to build something better than empires. The Valeth had expected humanity to surrender or die. Instead, humanity taught the galaxy how to fight, how to unite, and ultimately, how to forgive. It was the most human thing they could have done.